So we will do the same as yesterday. Read the common preliminary teachings from Kim. So again, feel the words, feel the meaning behind the words as they're being read. Dharma is not about happiness. Dharma is not about happiness. Say that to yourself a few times. Dharma is not about happiness. Are you practicing Dharma to make your life more happy or to make it better somehow? Well, it is okay, but not the real purpose of Dharma. None of the yogins and yoginis who realized their nature in full and became enlightened practiced to become happy. Why did they practice? They practiced to see the reality of themselves. Seeing and experiencing the reality of ourselves is the core of Dharma. In Buddhism, there are many exercises that are practiced extensively so that we can perceive the reality of ourselves, know ourselves as perfectly and completely awake awareness, which is embodied by the contents of our mind and our physical body. In Buddhism, there are many exercises that are practiced extensively so that we can perceive the reality of ourselves, know ourselves as perfectly and completely awake awareness, which is embodied by the contents of our mind and our physical body. In Buddhism, there are many exercises that are practiced extensively so that we can perceive the reality of ourselves, know ourselves as perfectly and completely awake awareness, which is embodied by the contents of our mind and our physical body.
Attachment. We become attached to life. We become attached to comforts that in our Western society are many. We also want to avoid discomfort. Yes? No? Think about it. Be honest. Don't bullshit yourself. Countless causes for dissatisfaction are created because we convince ourselves that we could become happy by momentary pleasures like delicious food, wild sex, physical exercise, intoxicating drink, intoxicating drugs, luxury massage, new car, new house, new partner, new pet, and so on. It can also be something subtler, like being attached to certain kinds of breakfast. None of these examples are causes of suffering if there is no attachment, that is, no self or meanness involved. If you see that none of these things can give you lasting happiness, you won't rely on them. In that case, you get your fix from knowing yourself as a Buddha. This fix is no fix, and everyone is seeking that. All sentient samsaric beings have Buddha nature, and this very fact is the reason why we cannot get a satisfaction from fleeting stuff. I am sure everyone in the room has heard this before. Yeah, I know all that already, you might think. I'm sorry to break the news to you, but you don't really know until there's not the slightest shadow in your mind. Admit and acknowledge that you are confused. because you are attached to your human condition and the pleasures that are available to you. This point needs to penetrate one's whole being, otherwise you are not doing the practice. If you go to a pub in a samsaric rapture of wanting a good drink, some fatty foods, good laughs, and maybe even get laid before passing out into oblivion, if even a trace of that selfish excitement is there, you are still attached. If you are not ready or willing to admit that, fine, no need to force it. Samsara will do its thing, so eventually you will get it.
Transience of life. We are all human beings with human bodies, names, personas, and we do stuff that humans typically do. Also, human beings have Buddha nature and therefore can get released from samsara, cyclical existence. Buddha nature itself is the cause for liberation. I'd like to ask you to contemplate the following. The inevitability of death through accident, illness, or old age. Have you heard of anyone who avoided death? Of course not. You, I, and everyone else, including our loved ones, will die. I am sorry to put it so bluntly, but it is a fact that you, I, and everyone else cannot prevent the wheel of time from turning. We can only leap out of it by knowing ourselves as Buddhas. So when talking about these preliminaries as Dharma practice, we are to sit down, contemplate, and imagine our bodies dying in sudden accidents of various kinds. Be creative. Or being ill with horrible disease, or being so old that your body simply cannot perform anymore. So that you cannot walk and move anymore, cannot eat because the stomach doesn't digest, you soil yourself, mouth is dry, eyes are blurry, ears don't hear well. If you contemplate the transience of life in this manner, your attachments and self-based confusions will transform and you will become more clear-minded. That is, a little bit closer to being free. We do not know when the moment of death comes, but it is certain that one moment your body falls down on the ground and the breath stops. Heat will escape the body of samsaric human in hours, and the body begins to decay, rot, and smell. Have you seen a dead body with your own eyes? Statistically, 151,000 people die every day. That's over 1 million a week. 1 million human corpses, young people, old people, children, black people, white people, Asians, tall people, short people, smart people, dumb people, handsome people, attractive people, unattractive people, leaders, followers, PhDs, millionaires, billionaires, and poor people. How many of them die in peace and has a clear mind? If you are not comfortable with the idea that you will die and leave everything you know behind, you will die confused, afraid, and anxious. Such a corpse is not a pretty sight. Yogis and yoginis welcome death with an open mind and die in equipoise, because they know it's an inevitable change and life continues afterwards. I am using quite graphical descriptions with the hope that you will be shaken up a bit and listen. Mortality is a good meditation and has been one of my main practices since I was a teenager for over 25 years. I am still not done and am certainly samsaric, so when I die, you might see my body go dry and black. That's a joke, haha. Life is transient, and that is one of the beauties of it. Everything is in motion. It is typical for humans when we grow up to create a belief system and absorb fixed views about all kinds of things. Self and attachment are present pretty much from the day we are born. Of course it is. One of the most central teachings of Buddhism is transmigration between different realms. Now we are samsaric humans. In 100 years, we might be dogs, cats, pigs, angels, gods, or demons, depending on what kind of mind we cultivate. Or we might be liberated. Actually, even sooner than in 100 years. When we realize or actualize our inner Buddhahood depends on readiness or willingness, which is merit, karmic connections, meaning teachings and teachers, and effort in practice. Readiness and karmic connections come from previous lives and are further strengthened in this one, if one practices. Effort in practice also comes from previous lives and greatly defines our ability to understand Dharma quickly through flesh and bone, instead of brooding on mental concepts. Some practitioners, the moment they hear of Dharma, of Buddhas, of emptiness, or something like that, are already on the path. It just clicks. It is like the old analogy of a horse and a whip. A brilliant horse runs at the shadow of the whip. At the other extreme, the horse walks lazily and takes breaks even if it is hardly beaten or beaten hard. I've seen many such bad horses in people who are very casual about Dharma, but because they don't practice, they are mere believers, convinced that they know what the teaching of the Buddha is about. When such people draw their last breath, it will be a crazy and scary roller coaster. Maybe they won't take Dharma as granted in future lives. Such people never listened to their teachers and never really did preliminaries. Then there are horses in between these two. What kind of horse are you? Clarify your motivation to yourself to make your path easy and straight. If you are after happiness or just nibble at it, bite here and there, you have a long and winding road ahead of you. It is not a problem for me, and I am not admonishing you either. So, mortality and transience of life is a great preliminary.
Honesty. Honesty is another preliminary. We need to be honest and willing to see our own faults. Not many people can practice that well because we want to affect things in our favor to make it better for us so that we can be happier. If we cultivate honesty and sincerity by simply reminding ourselves to be honest at this moment, that already reveals ourselves as Buddhas. Honesty and sincerity bring in a flood of energy that is pure, pacifying, and grounded. If we remain honest about our thoughts, words, and actions, we are already Buddhas. It is a misconception to think that if one remained honest for 30 years, then the reward would come after such a long period of cultivation. No, the reward of non-reward is instant and has an instant effect on our minds. Preliminary of honesty, reminding ourselves to be honest, like other preliminaries, needs to be repeated many times. In that way, we are actually transforming our self-centered and self-invested habits. Being honest purifies our actions. Acknowledgement of confusion and value of Dharma. We cannot really value Dharma unless we can actually acknowledge the depth and seriousness of our confusion. Again, think about the wheel of life, Bhava Chakra, and transmigration in realms. If you don't practice the Dharma, you cannot know yourself. If you don't know yourself, you are unaware of karmic records stored in your subconscious mind that will kick in full the moment you die. When a filled but untied balloon is released in a room, it flies all over the place and ends up in a random spot. Look at your emotional reactions and get a sense of where you're headed. Maybe you end up in another human life, but think of all other possible places and circumstances you could end up in. When we are still in the human form and have the opportunity to practice the Dharma that very, very, very few people have, you can remain honest and acknowledge the scope of your self-based confusion. As tantrics, when we realize that we are truly fucked, is the moment when we take refuge in the Mahasiddha Guru, mainly Guru Rinpoche, and he is more than happy to help anybody. Past Mahasiddhas are literally hanging in the air on all corners of the world, just waiting for people to turn to them. We only need to make the initiative, and when we do, it's such a joyful and fulfilling ride. Through Guru Yoga, this association, we come to know the reality of ourselves, which is the whole point. Like this, bit by bit, we come to value the Dharma. Little by little, appreciation and valuing Dharma becomes us. There is nothing else but your awakened nature. Bodhicitta. All these preliminaries, Tibetan Nundro, give a rise to bodhicitta, heart-mind of enlightenment. Bodhicitta is just another way of saying that we begin to become who we essentially already are. Samsaric beings don't give a shit about others because they are only concerned about their fix and the happiness of those they know or who belong to their group. Aren't most people already like this? It's a bloody mess, isn't it? By caring for others, bodhisattvas break the bubble made of habits, lies, and likes and dislikes, that is the self. We begin to care for others because we become less self-immersed and begin to see that everyone else around us suffers too. Thank you and bows for listening. Now practice, actualize these teachings. Make these words of countless predecessors your lifeline. Don't waste your time. Again, I'm sorry that I couldn't make it due to this retreat due to being ill. I wish you all a great spring retreat. Much love, Kim. So, how long do we have? Oh, it's 15 minutes. So continuing to Adi Yoga. Or is it? Yeah.
Just feel what was being said in the text. Yeah, let's take a break. Afternoon break. By the way, we'll do the... You can just turn it off. We'll do the question